This week on London Real, we have the investor, entrepreneur, and mentor, Tai Lopez.
The only question should be, what should be the experiment that I start today? What if you invest in yourself? Live your own life. Know how your brain works. Always lead with reward. Money can make you happier. There was no karma. Mother Nature will leave you to starve and eradicate your genes. You have to go up exponentially or else you'll go down logarithmically. Be the person you'd want to invest in. Everybody can have enough in the world.
London Real presents Tai Lopez, How to Become Great.
To get what you want, you have to deserve what you want.
And we are back on the mean streets of London. This week on the show, Mr. Tai Lopez is back in the building. Many of you would recall our last interview with Tai many months ago. He is a fascinating man. I would call him almost an anti-hero. When he's not reading a book a day, he's shooting videos in his home in the Hollywood Hills with his Lamborghini in the background, or giving TED Talks. Tai is a really fascinating guy. I spent some time with him in Los Angeles in January at one of his conferences. Yes, we did some illegal speeds on the highway in that same Lamborghini, and we had some great talks in his garage in the Hollywood Hills. You know, Tai is just really unique. You know, he brings such a fascinating perspective. He used to live with the Amish. He is not a flashy guy in a sense personally, but then he drives some crazy cars, and he's got a lot of really interesting messages. You don't meet many guys in their 30s that are quoting Charlie Munger and looking up to Sam Walton. So I was so glad to have Tai back on the show. But one thing about Tai is that boy can talk, which I guess is my job, is a good thing, because we talk on my show. But this could be our longest show ever, but I guarantee it's worth every minute of it. Like I said, Tai has so many ideas about so many concepts. His four favorite things he talks about are health, wealth, love, and happiness. And I just kind of sat back and drank it all in. So I think you will too. I hope you enjoy. Tai's got fascinating ideas, and I hope to see him back in London and back on the show sometime soon. So there you go. Speaking of TED Talks, mine has dropped really recently, and I'm getting just so much love from it. I did not expect this from you guys, and so I'm really humbled, and I'm really grateful for all the comments I've gotten, and I'm responding to every single comment. So if you want to ask me anything, just go on the video. I think you can click on the link below. It's the TEDx channel on YouTube, and there's hundreds and hundreds of comments, and I'm responding to every single one. So if you even want to ask me, like, my favorite recipe for, say, a kale shake, I'll answer it on there. And so many views, so much love, and I didn't expect this. You know, this is just my story from going from a banker to a broadcaster, from having a moment in Richard Branson's chalet in Switzerland, to walking away from it all and setting my own studio right up here in Shoreditch, London. So thanks so much for just, I guess, giving me such great feedback. I didn't expect it. I'm hearing from people I haven't heard, guys I went to school with at MIT, old piano teachers, relatives, and people that early on supported me in the show. So just thanks so much for that. And let me know what you think of the show, the TED Talk. If you don't like it, just let me know and leave some comments. So much love on that scenario as well. And finally, before I let you go, I just wanted to give some big love to one of our long-term supporters, and those are the folks at Bulletproof. I just sipped some of their fantastic coffee, and they also have an amazing book out, which is The Bulletproof Diet, which is Dave Asprey's personal story from being massively overweight and, you know, really having problems with a lot of molds and toxins, to really cleaning all that up and finding the diet that works for him. So it's definitely worth a check out. He's also going to be blogging for us very regularly now on londonreal.tv. So check that out as well. You can get the book at orderbulletproofdietbook.com. You also get a free cooking book, 10% off one of your purchases, and you support the guys that support our show. So big love going out to those guys. I serve that drink for every single London Real guest, and they all love it 100% of the time. So it's all good. So there you go. I've been releasing my short videos, my vlogs, and most people seem to like them. But if you want to ask me something, or if you want me to film something special, just let me know, and I'll make it happen. I'm kind of having fun. You wouldn't expect it. I'm a little shy sometimes in front of the camera, but lately I've been pulling my phone out everywhere and just doing them. So thanks so much for that. I appreciate the TED love in a huge way. And that's it, man. Stay tuned. Subscribe if you're not subbed. Check out the great blog posts on our website. And now I leave you with the one and only Lamborghini toting, book reading, Hollywood Hills living in, Tai Lopez. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Mr. Tai Lopez, who is a millionaire mentor. You're the entrepreneur power influencer. You're an author. You're a keynote speaker. You're, I think, a messenger of knowledge and maybe a reluctant guru of some sorts. I don't know. I was watching you yesterday at the Ace Hotel, and it was fantastic to be there and listen to you talking to everybody. You love books. You surround yourself with books. Your book club, I think, is second only to Oprah's in size. You lived with the Amish for 2.5 years. It was really interesting being at the Ace Hotel yesterday, where you had packed out the house. I want to talk about that stuff more. People are still talking about your episode when you were here 4 months ago. So Tai, welcome to London Real.
Thanks for having me. It was good seeing you yesterday too.
Yeah, no, it was really impressive, and it was just, it was just nice to see you get up there and talk to people, in a day where it feels like everyone is trying to kind of be a self-help guru. You seem like the guy that doesn't want to be that guy, and you just want to get information out there. And so I think people really relate to that. And like, I sat back there for 2.5 hours, and I was taking notes, but I was really getting ready for this talk, but I was also like taking notes into everything you said. So it was good stuff. I'd love to talk about all of this stuff, so I'm going to jump in here. You like to quote Seneca a lot, who's the Roman Stoic philosopher, and you were talking yesterday about how he was saying that, he had some thoughts about if you focus too much on wealth, and you were talking about your credo, which is the good life, which is health, wealth, love, and happiness.
Right.
And Seneca said some things about that, and I know you mentor some people, and you were mentioning how you mentor some guys that are, billionaires, and some guys in London, and one guy said he looked at wealth as a scorecard, and you were like, that might not be the healthiest thing. And I was wondering if you could talk about that, and then why you think Seneca is still relevant, and are we too obsessed with wealth?
Well, I would say yes and no. I would say, so, I was talking yesterday about the 25 cognitive biases.
Yeah.
So our brain, especially when it comes to the conversation about money, one of the cognitive biases that really kicks in is either pain avoidance, which is the second most powerful cognitive bias, the scientists say, and then another one is delusion bias. So that's another, it's called pain avoiding. Charlie Munger calls it pain avoiding delusion. So when you bring up the subject of money, people generally go from one extreme to the other. Aristotle talked about the mean, the middle. That's where you find the answer. So I don't know that the world overemphasizes money. I think the world might overemphasize conspicuous consumption, which, the latest research is that money can make you happier. You can buy happiness with money. Daniel Kahneman, Princeton, Nobel Prize winning guys. This isn't pseudoscience saying there's a marginal, reaction in our brain to wealth. So I talk about this kind of pyramid of wealth in the world. You have at the very bottom Donald Trump debt. Donald Trump said at one point, I was $9.2 billion in debt. I walked past a homeless man and realized that homeless man was $9.2 billion wealthier than me. So then it goes from there into scarcity. So Kahneman says under $75,000 a year.
Right, that's the point. That's the inflection point.
Right, and then there's a marginal return, but it keeps going up between $1 million. Even at $10 million, you will get a bigger return in the happiness zone of your brain than $1 million. The thing is, though, and what the research and people sometimes forget this, is on the way to creating wealth, if you ostracize friends, if you end up lonely, that's a 1 step forward, 2 step backward situation. So when you talk to people, people want to always point to some anecdotal thing. Well, what about this guy that made a lot of money and hurt a lot of people? Well, what does that have to do with anything? There's a lot of poor people that hurt people too. So, in addition to the 25 cognitive biases I talk about, I'm starting to talk a lot about logical fallacies. And so in these logical fallacies, it's called one of the fallacies is the straw man fallacy, where we make a very poor argument for the opposition and then we beat it up. So we go, well, you're just saying money is all that matters. And nobody's arguing that. I don't know one wealthy person that would say, well, my health doesn't matter. I could just die and I wouldn't care. Of course people care about physical health. The problem that each of us face, that you face, that I face, is life is a juggling act. And you can only juggle so many balls. Like Confucius says, the man who chases 2 rabbits, ends up with none. But we really have to chase 4 rabbits. You have to chase physical health at the same time as you chase physical wealth. At the same time that you balance, Dunbar's number, this 150 social connections, people don't realize it's more than 150. The reason our brain is tuned in to this 150 number, this size of a village 75,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago, is that, and Matt Lieberman talks about this in Social, to connect with 150 people, it's not just you connecting to 150. You have to balance and modulate and understand the 150 relationships between each. So your relationship with Brian, but I also have to know how you're getting along with Maya and what Maya thinks of you. So 150 relationships is actually 10,000.
Okay, but if you do the permutations.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
So we got to juggle that act, and then you have to juggle this pulling together into some level of feeling of fulfillment. So when people oversimplify, I always think of Albert Einstein. You should make things simple, but not simpler than they are. Whenever somebody says, well, the answer is, wealth doesn't make you happy. Well, sorry, that's too simple of an answer.
Right, because it will to a certain extent. So are you a logical guy? Because yesterday you were talking about, things that I remember from my science fair project, and I'm a trained engineer, not to drop names, but from MIT, and so I was drilled down this whole research, hypothesize, experiment, analyze results, and rinse and repeat.
Yes.
But you don't come off as like a tech guy. But that's something that you see as humans. We usually go the other way, which is anecdotal evidence and make decisions based on that. Yeah,
because another of the cognitive biases is our tendency there's a good article in Tilson Funds it's a speech I think Munger did at Harvard, where it's our superpower reaction to solving cognitive dissonance. So whenever we see, for example, somebody more successful than us, our brain immediately wants to resolve the dissonance. We don't want to say, maybe I have no idea why they we want to resolve it. So how do people resolve it? They go, well, that person cheated.
Right.
Oh, no, that person had a lucky break So we're always solving dissonance. That's why religion is such a powerful force, because it resolved cognitive dissonance, the greatest question of all. What happens after we experience dissolution of the body? As Freud says, our pain comes from 3 areas. First is the dissolution and decay of the body physically. The second one is our battle with nature, hurricanes, physics, getting hit by a car. And the third is our inner relationships with other people. But we want to solve all the dissonance. When we see somebody that we don't know, we want to snap judge them. We see someone taller or shorter or a different amount of melanin in the skin. What do we want to do? We want to go, let me solve the cognitive dissonance. What we don't want to say, and what you must do, and what you learned at MIT, is you have to go, well, let me say it this way. When I meet people, I generally know if I would invest in them or not. And this is, I can't even say it in words. I meet people who, when they are exposed to something they don't understand, their attitude is, And then I meet other people that go, meaning curiosity.
Okay.
The world is better now because of a handful of curious people. Some of them are scientists. Some of them aren't. Some of them are Martin Luther King Jr. Some of them are people who go, something's wrong. That's the first of the 7 steps in the scientific method, which is you ask a question.
Right.
The second one is they're willing to go, which means the humility to research and ask questions. Then
right. A lot of people don't even do that. A lot of people just generalize and go on.
Most people ask People only really do number one. They ask a question and then they skip past hypothesis, which is number three. They skip to one that doesn't even exist. I mean, conclusion. What can we really know? I talk about this in the 67 steps. I say, one of the big problems in the world, in my own brain, let's not even talk about other people, let's talk about one of my problems, and I think it's shared with everybody, is that the other way to say this cognitive dissonance is I have a black and white mind. I want to resolve things in a black and white way. If you bring up politics, I want to go, oh, no, it's not the liberal. I want to resolve it. What I don't want to say is I have no idea, and I'm willing to spend 18 months open-mindedly trying to figure it out. That's such a, people want to be enlightened. I'm like, that is enlightenment. And it's provable. Every great thing that we experience, every technology, everything that makes us live longer, all comes out of that mindset, the non-black and white mindset. So the word I use now is accurate. So if someone comes to me, I know last time I was on the show, I got some flack for talking about ayahuasca, whether it's healthy to not use. So what I would say to people is, my opinion is not, you shouldn't think of it whether it was right or wrong. It's, am I more accurately describing what makes humans achieve what they want to achieve? My opinion was, and still is that even if mind-altering things like LSD, DMT, ayahuasca, or any kind of biohacking is effective, my opinion about what about opportunity cost? When you're doing that, is there something you could be doing that's more efficient at getting you what you want? So if you want to lose weight, is the place to start with a biohacking idea? Is the best place to start with kettlebells, doing 3 or Fitbit or whatever biohacking tool? If you want to biohack your brain, what really works? What's efficient? Because one of the cognitive biases that cause us to make mistakes is misweighting, meaning doing the wrong thing, the right thing in the wrong order. For example, what makes humans healthy? What could I take away from you right now that would cause instant death? We know oxygen. So when you're trying to be healthy, you have to start at the top. It's like Maslow's hierarchy. So you start there. What about sleep? Sleep certainly is in the top 3 or 4 things. Taking a multivitamin is number 98 or 19. But people want to sell you multivitamins because it's harder to sell sleep. So the whole world is misweighted. Sure, ayahuasca may give you a level of enlightenment that you might not. I decided I always like to read disconfirming evidence.
Right.
So I've been reading Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception, or one where he talks about psychedelics. But I would still contend, by evidence, who are the people whose ideas changed the world? It's Stephen Hawking sitting in a wheelchair, writing books with his eye, starting with first things first. And I think first things first is what messes up. And I think it's primarily from a consumer world that can make money on multivitamins, but can't make money on telling you, go to bed earlier.
Right.
Sleep 8 or 9 hours and see what percentage of human health care costs would go away if people started at the top? Make sure you get enough air. One of the things, you gotta be doing enough cardio that you're breathing enough to breathe in enough air. I'm no expert on each of these things, but I think every doctor would agree. Taking a multivitamin will do nothing if you aren't sleeping 8 hours a day. I learned this being on a farm for 10 years under Joel Salatin, for 2.5 of those years, then traveling to 51 countries, studying sustainable agriculture and the soil. There's a lot of parallels between us and the soil. So if you take the soil to grow anything, the most important thing would be photosynthesis, meaning you need the sun. You take away the sun, doesn't matter how much compost you put on the soil, how much irrigation and fertilizer you put on, no matter how much fish emulsion, nothing grows. So the first thing is, don't put your plants in the shade. Almost nothing grows in the middle of a forest. So there's an echelon. And so what happens, and this is the same thing with health, wealth, love, and happiness. The reason I talk about wealth is the fuel. In fact, I stopped using the word money. Call them fuel units. And this you can show statistically. People who have more fuel units have more impact on the world, sometimes negatively, but they have the power. Their kids are healthier, they're healthier, they live longer. They have the ability to do more. You need fuel units. Without those fuel units, love will be affected. Read,
So
Dr.
is that why
Marti-
you focus on wealth? Because you think it's a key ingredient to get the others?
Yes.
Okay. But like, for example, this guy that was looking at wealth as a scorecard, you immediately identified that could be a long-term unhealthy thing
Yes.
to do. And
Yeah.
Is that because he's putting all of his eggs in that one basket and he needs to look at the other three?
I think it's more just about science. So conspicuous consumption. I just started this little Lamborghini
I know,
series.
I was about to ask you. You're the walking paradox and walking conundrum because
Right.
you talk about the dangers of conspicuous consumption, and Tai just launched a great series, by the way, where he's driving around in his Lamborghini in LA talking about some of your teachings.
Yeah.
So where does that come in?
So I've had all kinds of cars. I was sleeping on a couch with $47 in my bank account, and I started as an entrepreneur years ago, and I saved up enough. And the happiest I've ever been on a car when I bought a used Mitsubishi Galant. I remember driving it over to my girlfriend at the times and going, "Look at this!" It was like a $6,000 car.
First car? Or
First
real
car.
First
car
yeah.
that I bought.
Okay,
really.
right.
I had a junky car given to me when I was a little younger, but so I've lived at the Amish for 2.5 years with a horse and buggy.
Right. And you were saying yesterday you learned a lot from those people.
Oh yeah, the Amish are maybe the best people I've ever met.
You said you learned something fascinating. I was listening to yesterday, and you said that these people value work, as in that is something that's just like air to them, as in it's something to be proud of, it's something to look forward to.
Right.
You said they punished a little boy by not allowing him to come
Right.
to the fields, and he was just like, oh man.
Yeah, Joel Salted used to say, what's wrong in the world? People punish their kids. Well, you have to do the dishes for a week. What did you once again, what neural pathways have been rewired by that one discipline? Work equals pain. You know why education system doesn't work now? It has nothing to do with the points that people bring up, in my opinion. The reason education system doesn't work, they forgot about the 25 cognitive biases. Instead of leading with reward, they lead with pain. Tests. Oh, come back to school after summer's a lot of reward. You do whatever you want.
Right.
All the kids. Then come to school, and we're going to force you to sit in classes you don't care about. We're going to take those classes and take all the fun out of them by having exams and quizzes and tests. You can't lead with pain. The average person, once they leave high school or college, doesn't read a book. I forget, I read the stat, doesn't read a book again for 12 months. Now, if you show somebody, let's say this Lamborghini, if I pull up somewhere, so once in a while kids will come up and say, how'd you get this car? If I go, read this book, and I pull out Peter Drucker's book, man, they're going to read that book because I led with reward.
Right. So you reward as in look at what you can get. Potentially you can be like me.
Lead with the end game.
Right.
All of life. And you have to be persuasive, not only with other humans. I sometimes wonder, what's the greatest social skill? I would say it's to be persuasive, not to be manipulative, because persuasion taken for negative purposes, obviously manipulation. But that's why I'm so big on understanding the 25 cognitive biases, because the first person you must persuade is yourself. People, it's a New Year's. So the average person, what is it? Quits their New Year's resolution within 18 days or something.
18 days, okay.
You read different
I've seen it in the gym because they
most
get
people
packed
stop
for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, so why? Well, most people, you're leading with the pain. I'm going to do more crunches. Arnold Schwarzenegger's dad, the genius dad of all dads. Son, Arnold's 5 years old. Before you can eat breakfast every day, 3 push-ups. Arnold's brain is not the brain that you and I have when it comes to physical, working out. And that's why we don't look as good as him when in his prime. So his dad led with the reward. His brain now associates, and for years and decades, and maybe even his whole life, has led with every time workout is the greatest thing I can ever do. And so the Amish, the greatest compliment, you even hear the word Schafa, which in German, the Amish speak German, means worker. So if a boy wants to marry a girl, And, he asked the dad permission. You don't really have to ask permission in Amish, but they kind of do sometimes. First thing that dad's going to talk about among his family is, well, you'll know if you're the girl that your dad gives you the blessing or your parents give you the blessing if they go, oh, yeah, he's a shafa. And it's like that, the worker, the man, that's the pinnacle of success.
So it's in the language, which is the most subconscious
Yeah, it's in
way.
the language.
Yeah,
it's
powerful.
So for us, the greatest quote of last year, I collect quotes. I've been collecting quotes since I was 2016. Maybe the best quote I've ever heard in my life. It's not as fancy, it's not as catchy. It's based, I've kind of refined it in a little bit my own, but Steven Pinker, the Harvard professor.
We had him here. He was a fascinating guy, yeah.
And he, and my modified version is, you and I, Brian, have a perfect brain. Everything fires perfectly. The only problem, it fires perfectly for a world that hasn't existed for 75,000 years. So all our fears make sense when there's, saber-toothed tigers outside, when there's no electricity, when there's scarcity in the world.
Right, and the same with our eating habits.
All our eating habits. If you could design your own children now, you would remove the hunter-gatherer's first urge in food, which is to seek out honey. Dr. David Buss says, from the Hadzas in Tanzania to the Ashe in Paraguay to any tribe that he studied, they look for honey because it's a quick source of carbohydrate, energy. So we have a perfect brain for a world where you only can find honey every 6 months because it's so scarce. So if you could make your children, you would rewire every part of their brain.
Right. And the core of what you really do is you try to deconstruct the human brain and just try to figure out what we're dealing with and then try to understand it for what it is, right? That's kind of what the cognitive biases are about.
Well, what I try to do, because I'm not as smart as Steven Pinker or Charlie Munger, if I would be remembered for anything, it's just a person that got people thinking about great ideas from experts. I'm no expert in everything, and in many ways I'm not an expert in that much, but I do know how to read. I do have the ability maybe to boil things down a little bit easy, but really I want to be a catalyst. Go read, sometimes people argue with me. I'm like, great. Go read Steven Pinker yourself, man. Go read Charlie Munger. I didn't make $1 billion, Charlie. I made some money in my day, but I didn't make $1 billion.
Let me ask you about another Tai Lopez paradox. Joe Salatin, one of your mentors, said, those who can't do, teach.
Yes.
And now you're teaching.
Yes. But I'm not really a teacher still.
So what are you? That's what's fascinating about you,
I'm
Tai.
a businessman. I like being in the trenches. I bought 2 companies this year. I like direct response. I like subscription-based businesses online. I've always been a B2C guy, so most of the businesses, I have my hand in various businesses, some as the primary lead, maybe the CEO, but other times now just as a board member, advisor, Joel Salatin used to say, the reason, sometimes people are like, I haven't heard of you, Tai. That's because I was in the trenches for a long time, and I also came from a group of mentors that poo-pooed people that were just teachers. He used to say, if you can't do, teach. If you can't teach, administrate. That was his line. So I don't know if I want to be a teacher.
But you're producing lots of content. I look at now, you got webinars every day. You do videos from your home with your books. You got the book club. You produce a lot of content.
Because I'll tell you why. And, we live in an abundant world. And this is one of the big things. We have a brain that still lives in a scarce world.
Right. Okay.
By the way, going back to your very first question, the reason most people have such an abrasive topic to talk about money is because people have the perfect brain to be skeptical about money, because money represents in some level scarcity, right? The definition of money is scarce resources. In demand, scarce resources.
Okay, yeah.
I've asked every professor that I've ever met, and that's the best I could get a common agreement on. In demand, scarce resources. That's why gold is more valuable than iron, because there's much less of it in the world, and it's in demand for its somewhat unnecessary reasons. But when it comes to money, at its core, if you printed too much money and made it not scarce, you would have mass inflation. Like when my grandma was young, she was born in 1918 Germany, post World War I, and they used to get, her dad was a doctor, would be paid in wheelbarrows of money that weren't worth any. You could burn them in the fireplace, she said. So we're always going to have scarcity. Whenever you talk about something scarce, the 75,000-year-old primal brain in us gets angry, why does that person? But it's not that way anymore. There's more wealth being created now. It's unbelievable.
Right, because our concept with wealth has changed. I mean, we were talking about Jared Diamond's book, and I had him on the show, author of Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Yes.
And he was saying in Papua New Guinea, when you get a lot of money, he said, everyone comes over and moves in with you.
Yes.
And so he's like, that's the last
Still
thing.
happens sometimes. It still happens.
He was saying that's the last thing people want, because everyone comes over and wants it, and you have to share.
Right.
So,
well, now what I think happens is you can go out and make your own. I tell people, if you want to listen to one thing I have to say about money, the bar is so low. The skill level is so low in the world right now. Even from those, I'm lucky enough now to spend a lot of time either as friends or business partners with some of the most successful business people. In fact, right before I came here, I was with a guy who just in his 30s just sold his company for $400 million or something, or actually more, but he's cashed out that much so far. He's sharp. There's not that many sharp people. And even the sharpest of the sharp are still tricked and deluded by their own brain. It's almost impossible. But I think of it this way. There's a huge stallion horse running around a room. If you've ever been around a stallion horse, they will kill you. They are violent. If you stay in that room long enough in the corner cowering, that horse will eventually come around and kick you, pick you up. Horses will pick you up by the mouth, throw you on the ground. There's only one safe place. That's to throw a harness or a bridle and jump on that horse and harness it. So each of the cognitive biases, instead of having pain and anger and delusion about wealth when you see somebody wealthy, that guy did something wrong, or why is that guy talking about Why not go look yourself straight in the eye, look yourself in the mirror and go, I did something wrong in my life. That person did something I wasn't willing to do. Then you take the pain, instead of pain turning into delusion of anger, you go, never again. When I was sleeping on a couch with $47 in my bank account, I remember $47, I had no college degree. I had lost touch with almost all of my friends. I had a few skills, milking cows, riding horses from the Amish. Okay. I read a book, Tony Robbins' line, and he says, when you succeed, you party, and when you fail, you ponder. But all great things come from pondering. Winter, spring, summer, fall. That's all life is. I think life, I use the Drucker time frame, 18-month cycles. I think when you look yourself straight in the eye, honestly, and you never come out a winner until honestly you face the pain, you jump on the back of the horse. Instead of it kicking you in the corner, you ride that horse right up the triangle, right out of debt into scarcity and right into financial independence, maybe to prosperity. And some people, not everybody needs to be a millionaire or a billionaire, but everybody can have enough in the world. Everybody can have enough. And the problem is, and the message to get there, people don't believe because it sounds fishy. You have to spend your way wealthy. Right. That's what people don't get.
Let's talk about that. This is the abundance versus scarcity. It doesn't get talked about that much, but it's a concept that's been thrown out there before.
But not in this way. There's there's various religions that talk about tithing your way rich and things like this. And I'll put it this way. I believe you should just run everything experience. I read a book a day and I tell people read more. People sometimes argue with me and I say, before you argue with me, did you ever try this as an experiment? You're coming from the black and white mind. You're sure I'm wrong. You're trying to solve the cognitive dissonance. Why don't you try what I'm saying? Worst case, you'll have a few books on your bookshelf unread. And what will happen when you run enough experiments, you'll be like Thomas Edison, who died one of the most important people in history, with 1,000 patents some of which are the basis of all the things we're using right now, the video camera.
Right.
He said, sometimes it took me 1,000 experiments to get a patent. 1,000 experiments times 1,000 patents is 1,000,000 experiments. Brian, you run 1,000,000 experiments in your business, you will be a wealthy man. Tai, you run 1,000,000, you'll have all the money you need. You don't need everything. So I've run this experiment. Now, my experience alone isn't enough. to prove something. It's too anecdotal. But one thing you can start with is proceed with logic. We have everybody, even the dumbest person, has an incredibly powerful brain, more powerful than supercomputers. So what can you do with money? The average person in the United States, I read, saves about $2 out of every 100 they make. So they're spending. So there's only a couple things you can spend money on.
Most people I know spend more than they make.
Yeah, but even then, they're spending on they're spending on credit cards. Yeah. So there's still it's a postponed spending of someone else's money, obviously. The payback's postponed. So you can save your money to find abundance. What's the problem with saving? Well, if you put your money under a mattress, the economy spends your money for you in the form of inflation and devaluation of your currency at the rate of 3 to 4%. That's why Will Durant, the Pulitzer Prize winner, says no wise person ever saves to be wealthy. Now, let me put a big caveat, a big disclaimer. You must save because you must save, as John Wooden says, for the rainy day. There is a purpose for just saving, either under a mattress, probably not the safe place, but if you put it in a bank, when you put your money in the bank, what do they pay you now? 1%? Then they spend your money in the form of using your cash, and they lend it out at 7 or 8% or whatever. When you put your money and get 1% in savings, the economy is still spending at 3%, let's say in inflation, you're still losing 2%. So the money's being spent. So the unarguable fact is that only spending creates wealth, but it doesn't always create wealth for you.
Right.
So when you put it in the bank, it doesn't create wealth for you. Your wealth is devalued. Now, you could then say, I'll invest in the stock market. And there's some level there. The average return of the average investor is probably about 6%. When you subtract fees and so on over time, you're back down to 5%.
You don't invest in the stock market, I take it.
Oh, I don't. It's not that. I don't think of it black and white like that.
Right, okay.
People black and white. I say, think about it this way. Every hammer you have is great as long as you're only confronted with nails. Second, you get confronted with screws or bolts, that hammer will become your worst ally. So when people black and white say, no, it's the stock market that create wealth. Well, I say, does it really? Anyone on the Forbes list from trading stocks? The answer is nobody. Not at the top. There's people that take controlling interest of stocks. There's occasional arbitrage George Soros people, but there's no people getting wealthy in their 401k. You can save, but there's not wealth created.
Right, not big wealth
there's
creation.
not prosperity.
And how do you live in abundance then?
Well, then you move to the second thing people do with you can do with your money is you can spend it on RRD spending, I call it, okay, which is restaurant and depreciating things. So people pay rent. So you're spending and wealth is being created, but it's for the landlord. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have rent because sometimes it makes sense mathematically, but never get it twisted up in your mind in delusion that you're creating wealth for somebody. It might be a bank of the landowner, or so you can do RRD. You can spend on food is RRD, even though it's a necessary restaurant depreciate. The value of the food you buy drops the second you walk out of the grocery store, and cars. And even though I got the Lamborghini, the value goes up because it's used for a business purpose. It will create much more value. So what everybody should be looking for in life is what a good investor looks for, 10x on their money. 10x in 7 to 10 years. Food obviously keeps you alive. But again, I just read a book on Tyson Foods, creating wealth for other people. Tyson's Monsanto, IBP, these big food packers and they're making. So that leaves us with the final question. If savings doesn't work and RRD spending only creates wealth for others, you're only left with one, I believe, and this is not a black and white, this is statistical, do the odds. What if you invest in yourself? Now, you spoke of Seneca in his book on the shortness of life. This is the resolution, the conclusion of that book. Most people never finish the whole book. But in the last chapter, he says, you can annex the wisdom and knowledge and experience of the world's greatest people. Annex, meaning suck it like a vacuum into you. He said, and this is a missed saying in that book. I've never heard anyone quote it. He said, it's as if they lived for you. So I heard a Bill Gates talk. Bill Gates said, sometimes I like to imagine that the whole world exists for me. And then he goes, and if it does, it's going pretty good so far. See, that's an abundant man. He realized abundance, and what he did is what Seneca said, annex the world for you. So you're watching this. If I have any good point, annex it for yourself. That's doubling down, investing in yourself. And all wealth comes from men and women who annexed the knowledge, wisdom, and experience of the ages of this world's most influential, intelligent, whatever adjective you want to use,
right,
into their own brain. So I tell people, if you make $100,000, drop $30,000 into your own brain. Now, everybody wants stuff for free. YouTube's good, it's for free. But sometimes you get what you pay for. So when I made, first business I ever did was with Joel Salatin. I don't think it was 50-50. I owned 20% or something. He put up the cash. I put up the work. I said, I'll work. A farm came for sale near Joel's, Duff Brown. And Joel, I overheard him talking to Duff, who said, I'll rent you my farm for free. I just want cattle and your sustainable agriculture and grass-fed beef cows there. And Joel said, sorry, Duff, I don't have anyone to do it. I don't have any time. And I said, that night at dinner, I lived with Joel for 2 years. I said, Joel, I'll do it. I was 18, I think. I'll do it. And he said, well, Ty, you work for me from 5 in the morning and you don't finish chores till 6 at night. I said, don't worry. I'll keep doing that 7 days a week for you. And then I'll get in my car, drive 45 minutes to that farm, and I'll put a flashlight helmet on and I'll take care of the cows. Now, Joel's a man who bootstrapped and came from nothing. So he likes it. By the way, if you're looking for a mentor, I got the best advice for you. People ask me how to get to a mentor.
Yeah.
You have to invite and remind the mentor of what they were like when they were your age.
Right.
People love themselves. The greatest reward. So Joel Salatin, I'm not as great of a person as Joel, but he saw a twinkle in my eye and he said, okay, deal. And for 9 months I did that, and we sold the cattle at profit, and my cut, I used to think it was 15 grand, but I was just at Joel's for Thanksgiving, and he said, no, Tyler, it's 12 grand. I took that 12 grand and I spent it traveling. I've been to 51 countries. I went all around the world. I went to Australia. I met a famous guy who invented permaculture named Bill Mollison in a small island of Tasmania. And I drove and I spent all my money. I ran out of money in New Zealand. But there's 2 things I've learned in my experiments that you can't go poor doing. One, I don't think you can go poor giving to charity. I've tried it. I tell my CFO, I'm like, let's give a little bit more, I never tell people the amount. I think you should do it inconspicuously. You should hide it.
And you can't get poor giving to charity.
I've tested it. The more I put the percentage up,
the more you get back.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's some esoteric thing. I think it could just be in a world of 7.3 billion people with tremendous social connection that eventually the word gets out and doors open up for you. Okay. But my CFO is like, we shouldn't do this much. And then the next month, I'm like, it's the best month we ever had. So that's one. But second, I am convinced you could make $100,000, go live at your parents', and take $60,000 and invest it in your own brain in the form of books, traveling to mentors, courses, seminars, everything, anything. Oh, you have a seminar? Donald Trump, you do a real estate seminar? Oh, the upgraded version is $50,000. See, most people go, he's trying to sell me on something. I've bought everything. I've spent, I have not tallied it up, but I'm sure it's millions. Not once have I felt ripped off, because if you have the ability, there's a great book by Stephen Johnson called Where Good Ideas Come From. He talks about why Bill Gates goes on a reading vacation. The mass accumulation of knowledge in your brain creates what I call, he doesn't call this, a pinball effect. The ideas start bouncing off each other. So the difference between one book and reading one book in a month and reading 10 in a day would not be, or 1 in a day and 10 in a day, is not